Hey guys, welcome back to Dustin's Shed. Today we're going to have a look at my 94 Ford Radisich Telstar. This is a bit of an oddball. It's a New Zealand only special edition done for Paul Radisich when he won the World Touring Car Championship 2 years in a row. So this is essentially either a Mazda 626 or a Ford Telstar, depending on how you look at it. It was just that they took the standard V6 version with a manual transmission and left the power as it was, 122 kilowatts, I think, something like that. Not a real high horsepower thing by any means. They left that as it was, put Bilstein shocks in it, changed some suspension bushes around for Nolathanes, and a few other bits and pieces, different front seats that are much more supportive than the standard seats. Put the skirt kit on off the top of the line fancy one back in the day. Factory Momo steering wheel and gear knob with the signature in the middle of the steering wheel. The 16-inch alloys are also the factory alloys on it, and back in the day they would have had the signature on the centre caps, and I'm pretty sure one of them does, but most of them have fallen off by now. Oh yeah, there we go. So yeah, so we're going to do a Cambelt and a few other bits and pieces on this, but we'll open the bonnet and see what's in there. So that's the big bad Mazda V6 that Ford used for these cars in the Telstars, which are essentially just a rebadged Mazda 626. So it's only 122 kilowatts, but the car's not exactly what you'd call heavy, so it does go reasonably well for what it is. But yeah, still no powerhouse, but it is a really cool car to drive, which is why I've got it really. So yeah, we're going to be having a look at a few things. There's a bit of oil leaking down around there, and it needs a cam belt, and chuck a set of spark plugs in, and maybe a few other bits and pieces while we're there. We've got an air conditioning compressor to go on it, and all the rest of the hardware as well, but while we're doing the cam belt we'll bolt that on. So I'll get it up on the hoist and start pulling things apart. So what I've done is I've just got the air gun and blown all of this out, and all the tops of the tappet covers and stuff, and all around here, so it's all nice and clean when we start pulling things apart, where they don't get dirt and grit and road grime and stuff falling in them. And then we're probably going to drain the coolant out, take that hose off, take the top covers off and get everything out of the road, and then put it up in the air and take the bottom off and see what we get to. So I'll pull some of that apart and go from there. So we've just dug a little way in, got a few bolts and stuff out, but I noticed a couple of things which I thought I'd point out. So a lot of Mazdas and stuff around this time have a weird sort of cooling system arrangement with a filler and then a pressure tank over here. So this one has a pressure cap, recovery cap as you'd expect, and it goes to the recovery bottle. This one over here is literally just a fill, so it should just have a cap, but someone's fitted a normal pressure type cap, so this should just be a completely flat radiator cap, essentially just that one with the whole middle piece missing out of it, just the rubber seal here. So that would mean this has been leaving coolant on the ground, so it's probably just been popping it out there when it stops rather than pushing it into the recovery bottle. And the other thing I thought I'd mention, just if anyone's doing a cam belt, the water pump bolts down there, which you can see, well, the belts are on and everything, it's a really good time to loosen them, because most of the time you pull the belt off and then fight to loosen the water pump bolts, whereas if you undo them now, in theory they should be reasonably easy. So we'll see. So we're just about to take the front pulley off, and you can see down there we've just lined up the timing marks. Just makes it a lot easier if you get it on TDC to start with before you start pulling the engine apart. And so we'll get down and get that front pulley nut undone the rest of the way, and take the front pulley off, and then hopefully should be able to get these plastic covers off and see what's inside. So because I said about putting it on TDC before we took the crank pulley bolts out, it's gone and proven one little thing that I didn't think about at the time. Because of the way the cam and crank are geared, you only get the cams lined up every second revolution, which if you look, there's the two little notches just here, and there's no mark on the cam, it's down the bottom. So we've put the front pulley back on, and I'll just wind that over until they line up, which hopefully should be reasonably easy. So now we're a bit closer to where we need to be, and then see the same over here. We've just got the one mark that someone's already marked. But I'll get the rest of this stuff off and go from there. Okay, so I've got it all lined up, and what I've done is I've just marked the marks with white pen, and I've also put some lines on the belt. And the same over here, this other twink mark was just one someone's made up. The actual mark is here. You can see a little notch in the cam cap there. And same thing, I've put a line on the belt, and I've done the same down the bottom, but you won't really be able to see down there. The lines on the belt just make it real easy, just a kind of a fail safe. If you start second guessing yourself and you've got the marks lined up and it's like, oh, it's halfway in between a tooth, what do I do? If you've transferred those lines onto your new belt, you know that it's gone back in the same place that it came off, so it should at least be where it was when you pulled it apart. And if you do get it a tooth out, you're gonna know. So but you don't want to do that. It's much easier to make these marks, check all the timing marks first, make these marks, transfer them onto the new belt, and then you can put it back together knowing that it's exactly where it was when it came apart. Right, so we're getting somewhere now. We've got most of the stuff off. I've just pulled the engine mount off so we can get the belt out. So that should come out real easy now because it's just hooked around the mount. And we've got the cam gears off, crank gear off so we can do the seals. Going to pull the tappet covers off so we can reseal that stupid little plug there and the other one over this side because they're both leaking, so we'll pull them off. Obviously the intake manifold's got to come off for that back one, so that'll be a bit of a pain in the butt, but anyway, got to be done. And if you look down here you can see, I don't know how well it'll show up on the video, but there is traces of coolant, old dried up coolant, along the top of the water pump. So looks like it may have been leaking from this cap and down. See it on there, maybe. Oh, you can see the trace down the side where it's been running down the side from on top of the water pump. So coming from somewhere up there. Anyway, we'll pull those tappet covers off and see what we get. Right, so I thought what might be a better idea before I get carried away pulling stuff apart any further is to check that our parts are actually right. So the seals we can't really check. That idler looks like that idler. Seems pretty close. That idler looks very similar to that idler. I'll leave them in the packets just for now, just in case. And that one looks like it'll do the job of that one. So that's good. And here's our new tensioner, which looks remarkably similar to the old hydraulic tensioner. You can use these again. You can put them in the vise and slowly wind them back and put a pin back through them. No drama at all. But this Cambelt's a bit of a pain to do, and if it breaks, it's an interference engine, so got problems. If it was a non-interference engine and real easy to do, I probably wouldn't bother. I'd probably reuse the old one just because they're expensive, but since it's a bit of a pain in the butt and it's going to be a catastrophic failure if it does fail, we'll put a new one on there. Now with the belt, I'm going to check that against the old one, which is a bit more technical, hence why I put the marks on before as well. So I'll transfer the marks over and we should be able to see if they're the same. So you can see there I've transferred my mark off the old belt onto the new belt, and it's a bit hard to show you with the camera in one hand. So you line your marks up like so, and then just move the belt around, being careful not to, a bit hard to do from this side of the camera, careful not to jump any teeth along the way. When you get to the other end, the marks should line up again, and that tells you your belts are the same length. Especially when you can't see the markings on the old one and you don't really want to count the teeth, because see, your marks still line up, so our belts are the same length. I'll transfer the remainder of the marks over now, just for reference, and then we'll pop that aside and pull the tappet covers off. So we've made it a bit further in, got both tappet covers off. We've got to give them a bit of a clean up, and got the water pump off. The leak was actually coming from the water pump gasket itself. There's no water above it, but there was water around the top of the water pump, and it's got a an O-ring, which by the looks of it, you can see the top is that side. It's gone very scody and horrible around there, and it's rock hard. You can't stick your fingernail into it, so it's highly likely that that's where we were leaking. It's probably been on there for a while, no doubt. So we'll put a new one of them on, get some new tappet cover gaskets on, get it all back together, some new cam seals in, reseal these little guys and get them off, get it all back together and see how she runs. Right, so we haven't been back in here for a couple of days, but you can see it's all, the back half's all gone back together, all cleaned up and resealed and everything there, new seals, bit of 3-bond around the one that was leaking at the back and all reassembled. I'm just going to do the same thing to the front. See that front cap's off. They tend to leak around this little seal here and just around where it's 3-bond together when they get old. So we've put some more glue on that. We'll put that on, put the seals in, and then chuck the tappet cover back on with a new gasket, and hopefully that should be all sorted. So we've just popped a bit of 3-bond around those seals and a bit on the bottom of here. I'm just going to pop that back together, and then we'll put the seals the rest of the way in properly. This just goes onto a couple of dowels, so it should all go together nicely in theory, and then we'll get some bolts in it, bolt it down and pop those seals the rest of the way in and be away. So that's our tappet cover sitting back on now. We just put a little bit of 3-bond just in the corners here where there's a sharp corner in the front there, and in by the where the distributor drive goes out to the end there as well, just to get a little bit more sealing. And also you probably notice that these washers are quite nice and shiny and new looking. The kit comes with a new crush tube like this for each hole in it. Some kits don't come with them, but the little rubber piece in here obviously goes flat over time and then stops you from being able to bolt the tappet cover down as tightly as it should be due to the crush tube. So you don't replace those and you put your new gasket on, and a bit down the track it's leaking because it's not actually bolted all the way down. So obviously we've got the kit with the new ones and we'll put them in, and we'll chuck some bolts in, bolt it down and carry on putting it back together. So we've just taken a new water pump out of the box to have a look at it, and it looks like it's the right one. There's a difference in the flanges on the front, but these two appear to be the same, which is good. So as I was saying before about the water pump seal, it was probably going to be a bit hard and brittle, and it really is. Just breaks into pieces. So I mean that should be a soft O-ring. It's still soft there, but does just break off. We've come to a bit of a halt now because the lovely people, someone's may have been into the kit before and the crank seal's wrong. You can't see it. Could probably measure it if I hadn't have pulled the other one out and damaged it, but it doesn't fit on the hole, so it must be wrong. And then did a quick bit of googling and it's supposed to be a 42.5mm seal, and this one's a 42.5 and 54.5, and this is 43 and 55, so just enough to make a difference. Thankfully it didn't fit in the hole, because if it did, it probably would have leaked. So we'll put that aside and probably take this thing off the hoist somehow and get it out of the road till we can get some parts. So I managed to get a new seal, which looks like it's going to be the right one this time around. They look very similar. The measurements match up with what they're supposed to be, so and it's also the one listed for the vehicle, so I don't really know what happened with the one in the kit. We'll get that in and then we can start putting it back together finally. So we've got our cam belt back on. You can see my technical cam belt holding tool on the bottom there, just stopping the belt from falling off the pulley while I was trying to get it all lined up. Makes life way easier when it's not running away on you. See the top mark? You don't know whether you can see that on the camera. There's a notch lined up with a little pointer, and my two paint marks are matched up. Same with this one. I've just got a brake line hose clamp on there real loosely, just to stop the belt from popping off when you're trying to get it all on. Same thing, those are lined up, and the last one there is lined up. Same, the old paint marks are still lined up as well. Now, because of the lip on the pulleys, you can't put everything on and then just slide the belt on afterwards, so you've got two options. You can either leave the tensioner off and try and put it on afterwards, or what I do is I leave this idler here off, put the rest of the belt on, put a spanner on here and just pull the rest of the belt tight so the slack's in this part, slide that up and bolt it in, and then you can check all your marks are right, and then once that's done, pull the pin on the tensioner and she's all good. So that's it, she's all on now. So what you could do if you weren't too confident here is wind it over one turn just by hand and make sure that all your marks line up again. The lines on the belt aren't going to line up, but make sure these marks all line up, and then you can be 100% certain that when you crank it over it's not all going to fall to pieces, and you don't really want that. Makes life difficult. So I'll take another short video once we've got all the covers and everything back on, and we'll see you run. So it's a bit later in the week now, maybe even a week since I've touched this thing, and we've got some pretty terrible weather, so the sound's going to be a bit average, but it's all back together now pretty much. All the covers are on, everything that's supposed to be here is hopefully in place. We've got some new belt idler bearings, new auxiliary belts as well, and I've got the air conditioning compressor on, not that you can see it down there, which will get working at some point. This cap that I mentioned, it doesn't have a bottom to it, it's just a fill cap, so obviously I need to top that up because I haven't had it running yet. So we'll top that up and put that back on, but yeah, she's all done. That's the end of that one for now. If you want to see more, subscribe, because there's going to be some more work done on this, and shortly I'll be bringing a V10 Audi A6 or S6 in to do a bit of work on, so it could be a bit of fun. But that's the end of the Telstar for now. We'll do some more on that later. Cheers.